A volley gun is a gun with several barrels for firing a number of shots, either simultaneously or in sequence. They differ from modern machine guns in that they lack automatic loading and automatic fire and are limited by the number of barrels bundled together. In practice, the large ones were not particularly more useful than a cannon firing canister shot, a grape shot. Since they were still mounted on a carriage, they could be as hard to aim and move around as a cannon, and the many barrels took as longer to reload. They also tended to be relatively expensive since they were more complex than a cannon, due to all the barrels and ignition fuses, and each barrel had to be individually maintained and cleaned. 15th century volley guns. The Barrel was a medieval version of the volley gun. It had its barrels set up in parallel. This early version was first employed during the 100 Years' War by the army of Edward III of England in 1339. Later on, the late Swiss army employed it. Multi-barreled artillery pieces continued in use during the 16th and 17th century. A double-barreled cannon called Elizabeth Henry, named after Charles I's youngest children, was used by the Cavaliers during the English Civil War and fired 2-ounce charges. It could also fire grape shot. The barrels were wrapped in leather to prevent rusting. On the continent, 16th-century Aragon developed a 15-barrel volley gun. German and Polish gunsmiths invented handheld multi-barrel guns. These were sometimes combination sword and axe pistols such as Henry VIII's walking staff, a 3-barreled gun and battle mace. Henry VIII also owned a multi-barreled German wheel-lock rifle capable of firing a superimposed charge. 18th-century volley guns. The knock gun resembled a conventional flintlock musket with 6 barrels hexagonally braced around a central barrel. All 7.46 caliber barrels were connected to the single flintlock pan in a manner intended to produce simultaneous discharge through row ignition, but one or more barrels frequently failed to fire. The gun was invented by James Wilson in 1779 and manufactured by Henry Knock for use through the Napoleonic Wars. 500 knock guns were produced for the Royal Navy, intended for use in repelling boarders or to clear an enemy deck in advance of friendly boarding parties. Admiral House Fleet was issued 20 guns for each ship of the line and 12 guns for each frigate. Recoil of the 13-pound knock gun caused dislocated shoulders and clavicle fractures among the sailors firing knock guns, and the muzzle flash from simultaneous discharge of multiple barrels could ignite canvas sail when fired from positions in the rigging. The knock volley gun was considered obsolete by 1805, but a surviving weapon was carried by Richard Widmark in the 1960 movie The Alamo. The knock gun was recently brought to public attention by its inclusion in Bernard Cornwell's Sharp novels, where it was wielded by both Sharp and his friend and colleague Sergeant Patrick Harper. 19th-century volley guns. 2 notable artillery-sized volley guns were developed in the mid-19th century, although neither was particularly successful in practice. Developed in the 1860s and based on an 1850s design by a Captain Fafchamps, the French mitrailleuse is an example of a multi-barreled volley gun that could fire all of its barrels simultaneously or sequentially over a short period of time. Also developed in the 1860s, General Oregon Vandenberg of the New York State Militia designed a weapon that had 85 parallel, 50-caliber rifle barrels. After failing to sell the weapon to the United Kingdom, he reportedly sold a small number to the Confederate States of America, although there is no record that they were actually used. One Vandenberg gun was located at Fort Fisher, North Carolina, and another reportedly at Salisbury, NC. A few handheld volley guns were also developed during the 18th and 19th centuries. One of the most distinctive was the duck's foot volley gun, a pistol with four 45 caliber barrels arranged in a splayed pattern, so that the firer could spray a sizable area with a single shot. The principle behind this type of pistol is one of confrontation by one person against a group, hence, it was popular among bank guards, prison wardens and sea captains in the early 19th century. In June 1835, Giuseppe Marco Fieschi used a homemade 25-barrel volley gun to attempt the assassination of King Louis Philippe I in Paris. He fired the weapon from a third-floor window while the king and his entourage were passing in the street below. Although 18 people were killed, the king only received a minor wound. The gun barrels had been sold as scrap by government arsenal after being labeled as defective, and 4 of them burst when fired. Fieschi was badly injured and was quickly captured. He and 2 others involved in the plot were condemned to death and guillotined in 1836. His volley gun, known as the Machine Infernale, is preserved at the Museum of French History. Modern connection. A number of designs of electronically fired explosive propulsion projectile weapons and non-explosive projectile weapons were developed by Metal Storm Limited, which had some similarities to 18th-century volley guns, particularly in that they use many barrels which can be fired all at once or in sequence, such as the Nordenfelt gun. These designs met with little commercial interest, and Metal Storm Limited entered administration in 2012. The Spanish Navy also uses a volley gun system, the Maraca, which consists of 12 Alicon 20mm cannons mounted in a tight cluster with an externally powered automatic loading system. It delivers an exceptionally high rate of fire for a very short burst, and reloads in less than 0.3 seconds. This makes it suitable for close-range defense against missiles, aircraft and small boats.